gotta let go of trying to be in control and slow down.
I love celebrating friends, and I'm so excited to celebrate Jonathan Ogden. Jonathan visited my family and I when we were in Japan. One of my favorite memories is his amazing attitude at dealing with the humidity, as seen in this picture right here. He's just the real deal. He loves God, and he's also courageous in being creative in the way he talks about God and shares God through his music and his art. He's part of Rivers and Robots. He also is part of something called Magnify Studio. If you hear me in the interview referring to Set Sail, it's now called Magnify Studio. So this interview actually took place a year ago. I became a high school teacher right in the middle of recording this interview on Zoom. Sorry that I'm so dressed up. I actually am not usually wearing a collared shirt, but I have a teaching interview right after this. And I'm finally sitting down to edit it in 2022.
Good question. Yeah, I think a lot of it's just kind of my influences from growing up, because like I'm the youngest in a big family, and my next oldest brother, actually two of my older brothers were DJs.
Wow.
And so like, yeah, I grew up as a kid with a lot of like electronic music kind of
cool.
coming down from the loft room.
Wow.
Yeah, I always just enjoyed that kind of influence. And actually, before I ever did like my own music or Rivers and Robots, I had a different like name I was doing music under, and it was all like remixes and
Wow.
just very electronic kind of dance music stuff. And so I only recently like listened back to some of it, and I was like, yeah, there's kind of like a lo-fi element here I can hear that's kind of made a comeback. But yeah, I think the two of the biggest influences on my production are like two producers, one called Jay Dilla, one called Nujabes, and they were both like, one was from America and one was from Japan, but they're actually the same age, very similar style, and they were just geniuses at like sampling really like beautiful melodic stuff, like a lot of jazz records and just unusual genres that you wouldn't think to kind of bring into hip hop, and then just like amazing at matching those with beats and like breakbeat type stuff. And so I feel like they kind of started the whole lo-fi thing kind of 10-20 years before it became a big deal.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But yeah, I've always enjoyed that influence. And then I think in terms of bringing it into worship, it wasn't something I naturally thought would work. And then I feel like when I first started music, I would overthink a lot. I used to think like, people want to hear this kind of sound, or is it okay to do this kind of song? What if people don't connect with that? And then usually like my weirdest ideas and the ones that I thought were too far were the ones that people connected with the most. And so once I figured that out, I was like, okay, kind of feel free to just make things now.
No, that's
try
so
ideas
awesome.
out.
So great. I noticed that you and Rivers and Robots and Set Sail, you guys even have these great videos about even making playlists and how to stay just knowledgeable about current music.
Yeah,
I think that's so refreshing, because I don't really hear too many, especially when it comes to worship, just songwriting, people talking about that. So that's pretty amazing. Did you grow up with that mentality? Is that something that's like natural in the UK, or because I know here you kind of grow up more like in a CCM type of bubble most often.
Right.
So I want to know where that came from, because that's something that all of you guys shared, which I thought was really special. So
yeah. Well, I think the UK is pretty different to America in that sense that there isn't really a CCM. There's definitely like worship music and the songs we sing in church,
sure,
and all the kind of Matt Redman and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we didn't really have like Christian music in that sense, or like there wasn't really Christian radio, that type of thing. It was always quite niche. So I think, I mean, in our band we have quite different experiences as well, because like Nathan, our bass player, was brought up in a home that was like, you only listen to Christian music, and so that kind of pushed him in a fun way to go and dig out like the most obscure Christian music and like find all the cool stuff. I think in my house it was just a very eclectic, like, you know, my dad didn't grow up a Christian, he became a Christian later in life, so He was like, he used to be in a band himself as well, and was just always a lot of music in the house of different styles and
Yeah.
60s stuff and electronic stuff, like I mentioned. And
Yeah.
I think I've just always enjoyed listening to new things, and being in Manchester as well, it's a big music city, so you get to see a lot of
Yeah.
live music and bands. And yeah, I've just always loved it. I always try to be a good listener before I try and
So
write
good.
things.
So I kind of have a question for you, kind of a deep question.
hmm
How important do you think it is? And if so, why do you think it's important for people, especially believers, Christians, to have that permission to listen to music that's
Mm.
not Christian contemporary only? And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, good question. I think I never want to give like a definitive
Mhm.
thing because I
Sure.
get there's different views on it. And also I've heard some amazing stories of people who like felt called to not listen to secular music and stuff like that,
Sure.
and have then had amazing examples of the songs they've written after that. So
Mhm.
I never want to give a definitive like thing, but
Exactly. Yeah.
for me, yeah, I've always just enjoyed listening to a huge range of styles, and I actually think there's like music itself is a gift from God, and that
Yeah.
there's like beauty in all of it, and people can use it for bad purposes, and there are
Sure.
messages in some songs that I would feel not comfortable listening to, but I think purely on like a musicality level as a musician, to be able to listen to classical and jazz and all
Mhm.
different styles, just it's like a bringing new colors in to paint with in some way, like
Yeah.
just understanding new genres and expressions. And yeah, I think it's very hard to define
It
even
is.
what is Christian. I mean, some of the great composers of classical music were Christians,
Mhm.
or maybe some weren't, but like, how do you define? Is
Yeah.
that violin part saved? I don't know. Like,
No, seriously. I always told my daughters, if you guys are really interested in becoming amazing oil-based paint artist or something,
mhm.
I would take you to a museum. I would take you
Yeah,
to a gallery. I would have you guys have an education of just who's out there and who's doing what,
yeah,
And at some point there would be some boundary if it was a little bit too, I guess, I don't know, um, intense for them, or just
hmm
more morally just degrading. I would be
sure,
like,
yeah,
oh, we won't check those out, I guess, unless you're at a point as an adult, if you feel like you can, like you're saying, see the gift of God there, and that's what
mm,
you take away from it.
yeah,
But but I feel like with music, sometimes, at least in America growing up, we didn't have that mentality of a museum and
mm,
learning art. It was more like, I don't know, this is this is where you're allowed to draw inspiration from, and
right,
nowhere outside of it. Yeah.
yeah,
And but yeah, I guess it really is a personal experience, right? Like for each
mm,
person.
yeah,
And
no, definitely.
I think
I
it's
think
so
there's,
neat because lo-fi hip hop is something that's becoming really popular right now.
yeah,
But just to hear your story though of how you grew up with that and how it's just been a part of you, I think that's amazing because um, I, I knew this worship uh, kind of like a pioneer songwriter. Back then, he was very what do you call it? Cutting edge. His name is Kevin
hmm
Prosh. Kevin Prosh. Do you
mm,
remember Kevin Prosh? Oh,
love
okay.
Kevin Prosh.
Oh, okay. So I love Kevin. He's one of
Yeah,
the most real people that you can meet, and he told me, like, Joe, the most important thing for every artist is just to stay true to your heart. That's what he'd always say to me. He'd
mm,
say, don't follow the trends, don't follow what's popular, and try to be someone or do something that other people are doing. Just stay true to your heart, and that will
yeah,
always speak to people.
mm,
And I
that's so true.
always, yeah, I thought, oh, that's so good. Because and that's the way I think of your music. I feel like you're not just writing the music you're writing because you're trying to do what's current. It really
Mm,
does feel like Jonathan.
yeah, well,
it
that's good
seems
to hear.
it seems like it's you. And there's earlier stuff too that you've done with Rivers and Robots that I feel like you're still on a path of exploring what you had permission to do.
Mm,
But I
yeah,
feel like you're getting more courageous
Yeah.
as you go.
Yeah, I
like
definitely
you're
feel that.
like you're saying, like things that you thought were so weird, people are actually maybe connecting more with than
Mm,
the things that felt safe, right? And
yeah,
so,
definitely.
yeah, so I love that. And so I was gonna ask, um, like how would you encourage, I guess, other people about just that simple word of courage of
Mm,
I guess that's what encouragement means, right? To give courage.
yeah.
How would you give courage to other aspiring artists out there who may be connecting with a genre of music like you have that was very different, not mainstream,
Mm,
not really common, to continue to just be brave to encounter the Lord there and also share that with other people.
yeah. I think, um, I mean, other than the lesson I've kind of learned myself just through experimenting of like,
Yeah,
I think realizing that there are people out there that people are willing to appreciate more than I think we think they will.
yeah,
um, we often have this idea of like what people will want to hear, and I think it goes for music and I mean all kinds of creative stuff right now. But people are always talking about like finding your niche and things, or niche as some people pronounce it.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I was reading about it even earlier today that you can look at kind of mainstream media or mainstream pop that kind of aim for this market of like
Mhm.
incredibly popular, widely accessible music, and in a lot of ways that's kind of the lane CCM was going down to. It's kind of like writing songs that have mass appeal and very wide reaching, but there's always like a huge amount of people, probably more than the mainstream people are hitting, that are into all different things. And so um, you find those kind of people that connect with what you do in a more unique way, and they'll be like the long term, like really loving what you're doing and connecting with it. And so I think also just redefining what success means, I think, in that, because
Mhm.
we're so like numbers driven in our culture that your music's only successful if you have this many listeners and reach this many people. And
Mhm.
I think that can drive a lot of creative choices of like, oh, should I write this kind of song because that might not be as appeal as much to as many people. But um I think, yeah, like you said about Kevin Prosh, when you stick to the heart of like what you love about the things you create, and you're creating things that you're excited about and you're passionate about, that will connect with somebody way deeper than something you've tried to cater to
Mhm.
like a huge audience, even if it's less
Totally.
people, and that might still be success for your music.
Yeah, no, totally. Going back to growing up, and with all your influences, um, was there ever a point where you felt kind of discouraged because your expression of worship and or how you
Mm,
connected with God didn't really match what you're doing in church, but you still had this heart for the Lord, heart for worship. But
yeah.
like, if you were ever to lead worship at like your local church, um, did you ever have that dynamic there where you would feel like you'd
Yes.
have to change into a different Jonathan, where you'd be singing?
I guess
You're
so, yeah.
you're now Tim Hughes and Matt Redmond, and you're not
Yeah.
this lo-fi hip hop influenced breakbeat worship artist. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
now it's different. Obviously, when people invite you, they are wanting you to do what you do. But was
Mm.
there ever a time where you had the same fire in your heart for the Lord, but it didn't seem music wise that you were being yourself?
Yeah. I think I mean, I still do in a sense. Like when I lead worship at church, I'm like part of a very small family church, and
Hmm.
a lot of like older people. I'm sure they won't mind me saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I lead worship there, I sing Hillsong and Matt Redman and like
Oh,
all
okay.
real simple stuff. And
Hmm.
um, for a long time, I saw them very separated as like what I do with Rivers and Robots, or like my own songwriting is not for churches. It's like, maybe
Sure.
people listen to it in the car and it's a different expression of worship.
Mhm.
And I kind of just thought maybe it's just my own, this is my way of worshiping at home with my music and production. Um, and then I started seeing people leading Rivers and Robots songs in their churches on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
And that kind of like threw me off because I was like, wait, are you allowed to do that? Like, you can use these songs in church. Like, I don't even sing these songs in church. So like,
You're like, I'm the one who wrote those songs. I didn't know I had permission to do that.
So
Wow.
I actually like would start to bring in a few songs into church sometimes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of it's just context. Like songs are written in a way that makes sense for the context, and like congregational Sunday morning worship, I think sounds a certain way for a good reason, because you have a huge room of people who are they're not there to like hear your music. Like they're not there because they're my fan and they want to hear my lo-fi stuff. Like they're just there to worship God, and I'll sing the songs that, you know, are widely appealing and like help a whole bunch of people with different music tastes to worship. And, but if I'm say at an event where like we've been booked as Rivers and Robots, then we'll play our songs because people have come for that. So I think the context makes a big difference of what songs we play. But I have started to blur the line a bit now and play some of my own songs Sunday mornings.
Well, I think that goes back to the strength that a lot of times people don't get to see that's behind the artist. And I feel like you have developed like a secret place life with the Lord, being able to be content with just accepting the fact, which we know now isn't the fact, but back then you were okay with accepting the fact, maybe this is just how I worship God at home. And maybe no one else benefits from this, but I definitely benefit from this. And I love it that I have this space where I can worship God in this way. And so I feel like not enough, there's not enough conversation about how important that is and how that's usually the strength behind a lot of these pioneer artists, because it kind of all starts there. That's kind of where that's the foundation for it, you know? And can you talk a little bit about that as far as
I always, one of the things we think about a lot with Set Sail is the story of the lady with the alabaster jar and how she like poured that on the feet of Jesus. And like, I think that's such a beautiful expression of worship because it was so like extravagant and honest, and in terms of like, it wasn't popular. Like pretty much everyone in the room hated what she did.
No, totally.
But Jesus called it beautiful, which is the important thing. And like, I think worship is that, like, even when we create and we do stuff, like to create something that's from our heart as like, here's just my expression of worship to the Lord. And like, everyone might hate this, but like, it's my honest thing of like how I want to worship. And I think that's kind of like what God's looking for, is that people who worship from the heart and in honesty and authenticity. But it's sometimes just hard to, when we try and fit it around other opinions, it becomes difficult. And that was one of the big challenges for us as a band too, is as soon as we started playing live and getting booked for events, it started, we had to start thinking about which box it fits in and all this stuff. It's like, okay, we get put in a music venue and we're singing songs that are too like worshipful to go in a gig venue, and then we'll get booked for a conference, but we're playing songs that sound too electronic for a worship conference. We're suddenly like, wait, where do we fit? How do we make this work? It took a while actually to like stop like overthinking that too much and get back to the thing of like, we just write these songs because we love them, and like this is our genuine expression of worship. So if people want to connect with that, then that's cool. But we have to keep writing from that place, and not, because even the venue thing, you can think, okay, we're getting booked for these kind of events, so I need to write these type of songs that fit this thing. It gets overcomplicated.
No, it's so good. I loved it in Japan that you led worship songs in a coffee shop. You know, and maybe the language barrier helped there to not make it as that, you know, just the, I don't know, just that dynamic there that you're talking about. But people connected so much with it, and the owner still talks about it as like the dream concert that he had in his coffee shop, you know?
So cool. I still follow him actually and see all the little shots of the coffee shop from now and then.
Oh, that's amazing. He definitely wants you back there. So, you know, so cool. Hopefully I can help host you again. I don't know. But
I enjoy the awkwardness, you know. I like bringing like a massive bass drop into a worship set, and then like, or trying to sing a worship song in a mainstream venue. I don't know. I think it's really fun.
It's powerful too. It's kind of, yeah, no, it's the awkwardness is it's kind of nice sometimes in that way, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the story that you shared from the Gospels, because not only did Jesus call it beautiful, he said like wherever the gospel is preached, so will this story be told. I mean, he didn't say that about any other miracle or thing that happened. It meant that much to him, you know. And I felt like it was powerful because no music was involved, but it was considered an act of worship. And like you're saying, there wasn't perfume dropping, hair wiping. That wasn't trending, you know.
No, it didn't go down well.
It wasn't the popular thing to do. But I feel like right now, if there's someone who I really like named Jason Upton, he said that if God showed up at a church and for some reason there was an accordion player on the worship team, by next year every church in America would have an accordion player on the worship team. Wow. He was saying, we have to stop this, you know, like we have to just know we have to be ourselves. But I just love it that I feel like it's going to be kind of neat that now, as you are fitting more into what's current with lo-fi hip hop and with worship sounding just the way that you guys are doing it, now there's going to be maybe a wrestle in that, saying, well, we're not doing this because it's cool and popular. Like, this is just who we are, and this is kind of what we've always done. Yeah. So
it does make me a little nervous when like the lo-fi hip hop thing started taking off. I was like, oh no, it's going to be a trend. And now it's going to like it's supposed to be the underground hidden thing.
Bethel Hillsong and Elevation releases a lo-fi hip hop worship album, you know.
It's going to happen.
And then you're going to be like, oh no. Yeah. But I think that's kind of special. It's kind of like if Mary saw that everyone released a new worship album of perfume breaking and hair wiping and tear washing, she'd be like, oh, that just took away my moment with the Lord. I didn't do that because it was cool. I did that because it was for the Lord. And so, but I think that's precious to talk about that and how that's what's behind your music and behind you. And I think that will speak to a lot of people, including me. That's really good. And so I don't want to exhaust you with too many more questions. I'll see you later,
Take the
man.
hat off for the next call.
Yeah.